I never expected a simple piece of paper to shatter my carefully constructed peace. But there it was, pinned to my front door with a black thumbtack, stark white against the dark wood, fluttering slightly in the autumn breeze. "This isn't over," it read in messy block letters. 3 words that sent ice through my veins and brought my past rushing back like a tidal wave. My name is Lila, and until today I thought I'd finally built the quiet life I'd always dreamed of. A cozy craftsman house in a peaceful neighborhood, a loving partner, and a job at the local library where the biggest drama usually involved overdue books. But that note changed everything. I stood there, keys dangling forgotten in my hand, staring at those 3 words until they burned into my memory. The street behind me was quiet, almost too quiet. Mrs. Peterson's wind chimes next door tinkled softly, and somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Normal sounds that suddenly felt ominous. My phone buzzed, making me jump. It was Ethan, my partner. "Hey babe, grabbing takeout from Ming's. Want your usual?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, that sounds good." I paused, debating whether to tell him about the note. "How long until you're home?" 20 minutes, tops." "Everything okay?" "You sound weird." "Just tired," I lied, hating myself for it. "See you soon." I pulled the thumbtack out and brought the note inside, laying it on our kitchen counter. The paper was cheap, the kind you'd find in any office supply store. Nothing distinctive about it, except for those threatening words and what they represented. My hands shook as I poured myself a glass of water. I knew exactly who had left this message. Ryan, Ethan's younger brother, had been acting strange ever since we inherited this house from Ethan's grandmother 6 months ago. He'd made snide comments about how unfair it was, how he and his wife Vanessa deserved it more. But I never thought he'd escalate things like this. The last family dinner replayed in my mind. Ryan's cold stare across the table, Vanessa's sugary sweet voice asking pointed questions about our renovation plans. "It must be nice," she'd said, twirling her wine glass, "having such a beautiful home just given to you." I'd spent years learning to control my reactions, to stay calm in the face of provocation. My past as a martial arts champion taught me that much, at least. But standing in my kitchen, staring at that note, I felt my carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. The sound of a car door slamming made me quickly shove the note into a drawer. Ethan walked in moments later, carrying bags of Chinese food and wearing his usual easy smile. "Got you extra spring rolls," he said, setting everything down and pulling me into a hug. I melted into his embrace, breathing in his familiar scent of coffee and cologne. Should I tell him? Would he believe me over his own brother? Questions churned in my stomach, souring my appetite. "You sure you're okay?" Ethan pulled back, studying my face with concern. "You look pale." The words caught in my throat as headlights swept across our front windows. Car was driving by slowly, too slowly. Through the curtains, I caught a glimpse of Ryan's black SUV. "Actually," I said, making a decision, "there's something we need to talk about." But before I could continue, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Hope you enjoyed my little message." There's more where that came from. The peaceful life I'd built was unraveling, and I had a choice to make. I could stay quiet and hope this would blow over, or I could fight back. As I looked at Ethan's worried face, I realized there really wasn't a choice at all. I'd fought too hard for this life to let anyone take it from me, even if that someone was family. I showed Ethan the note over our cooling Chinese food. His face darkened as he read it, then read it again. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. "You think Ryan did this?" He finally looked up, his expression a mix of doubt and worry that made my stomach clench. "Who else would it be?" I pushed my untouched spring rolls around with my chopsticks. "You saw how he acted at the reading of the will. How he's been acting ever since." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd grown to recognize. "Ryan can be difficult but threatening notes? That's not his style." "Then whose style is it?" The words came out sharper than I intended. Because someone clearly has a problem with us being in this house. Maybe we should. Ethan was cut off by the sound of tires on gravel. Through our dining room window, I watched Ryan's black SUV pull into our driveway. Again. Perfect timing, I muttered, standing up. But Ethan caught my wrist. Let me handle this, he said softly. He's my brother. That's exactly the problem, I wanted to say. Instead, I nodded and followed him to the door. Ryan and Vanessa stood on our porch like they owned it. Vanessa wore her usual perfectly coordinated outfit and artificial smile, while Ryan lounged against the railing with forced casualness. Hope we're not interrupting dinner, Vanessa chirped, peering past us into the house. We were just driving by and thought we'd stop in. For the second time today. Actually, we were in the middle of something, I started, but Ethan was already stepping aside to let them in. No problem, he said. Come on in. I watched them walk into my home, our home, and felt my martial arts training kick in automatically. Analyzing positions, watching movements, staying aware of exits. Old hobbits die hard. Love what you've done with Grandma's china cabinet, Vanessa said, running her finger along the antique wood. Though it's such a shame to change anything. This house has so much history. The way she emphasized that last word made my skin crawl. What brings you by? I asked directly, ignoring Ethan's warning glance. Ryan sprawled on our couch, his boots on our coffee table. Can a guy visit his big brother? Besides, Vanessa and I have been talking about the neighborhood. Thinking about maybe moving closer. Closer? The word stuck in my throat. Vanessa nodded, still wandering the room like a realtor sizing up a property. This street has such potential. The right people could really make something of these old houses. I caught the emphasis on right people and felt my hands curl into fists. Ethan must have noticed because he quickly jumped in. That's great, but maybe we could discuss this another time? Lila and I were actually in the middle of an important conversation. Oh. Ryan's eyes locked onto mine. Anything interesting? The note burned in my pocket where I'd stuffed it earlier. I met his stare, remembering years of competition, of knowing exactly when someone was testing my defenses. Just house stuff, I said evenly. Speaking of which, how's that fixer-upper you bought last year coming along? Vanessa's smile flickered. Their investment property had turned into a money pit, and everyone knew it. It's progressing, she said tightly. Though some people just have all the luck, don't they? Getting a move-in ready house just handed to them. Tension in the room could have been cut with a knife. Ethan shifted uncomfortably between us, torn between family loyalty and defending our home. Nothing was handed to us, I said quietly. Grandma Carter made her choice. Did she? Ryan stood suddenly. Or did someone help her make it? Ryan, Ethan warned, but his brother was already heading for the door, Vanessa close behind. Thanks for the lovely visit, she called over her shoulder. We should do this more often. After all, we're family. After they left, Ethan and I stood in silence, listening to their car pull away. Chinese food was completely cold now, forgotten on the kitchen counter. Still think Ryan didn't write that note? I asked. Ethan didn't answer, and somehow that hurt more than any threat could. The next morning at the library, I found another note tucked inside the book I'd been reading during my lunch break. You don't belong here. Never did. The handwriting matched the first note perfectly. My hands trembled as I stared at the words. Someone had been watching me, waiting for the right moment. Quiet sanctuary of my workplace suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable. Earth to Lila. Mia's voice made me jump. She peered over my shoulder, her usual cheerful expression falling as she caught sight of the note. What's that? I quickly folded the paper and shoved it into my pocket. Nothing. Just. Don't you dare say nothing. Mia pulled me into the biography section, away from prying eyes. You've been jumpy all morning, and now this? Talk to me. Before I could respond, the sharp click of heels on hardwood announced Vanessa's arrival. She rounded the corner like she owned the place, designer purse swinging from her arm. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The librarians having their little chat. "We're working," I said flatly, turning away. "Oh, I'm sure you are." Vanessa's voice dropped lower. "Working on how to keep that house, right? Must be exhausting, always looking over your shoulder." My spine stiffened. Mia stepped closer to me, protective. "Is there something we can help you find, Vanessa?" Mia asked pointedly. "Actually, yes." Vanessa pulled out a thick folder. "I've been researching property laws. Fascinating stuff. Did you know there are all sorts of ways a will can be questioned?" The threat hung in the air between us. I thought of Grandma Carter's final months. How she'd insisted I move in to help care for her while Ryan and Vanessa were too busy with their investment opportunities. "The will was perfectly legal," I said quietly. "Everything was witnessed and notarized." "Legal doesn't always mean right." Vanessa leafed through her folder. "For instance, when an elderly woman suddenly changes her will after her grandson's girlfriend moves in, well, people might wonder about undue influence." My chest tightened. "Is that what you're telling people?" "I'm not telling anyone anything." Her smile turned predatory. "Yet?" "That's enough." Mia's voice was sharp. "This is a library, not a courthouse. Take your threats somewhere else." Vanessa's facade cracked for just a moment, revealing something desperate underneath. "You think you've won, don't you? Playing the perfect caretaker, the devoted granddaughter-in-law? Some of us had to work for everything we have. Like that falling apart house you can't afford to fix?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Vanessa slammed the folder down on a nearby table, making several patrons jump. "You have no idea what it's like, watching everything handed to you while we struggle. That house should have been split equally. Ryan is family. You're just convenient." The old me would have responded differently. Would have shown her exactly how convenient I could be. Instead, I took a slow, steady breath. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. "Or what?" She stepped closer. "You'll call security? Have me banned from the public library? That would make a great story for the neighborhood gossips." My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Ethan wondering why I wasn't answering his texts. But I couldn't look away from Vanessa's challenge. "You want the truth?" I kept my voice low. "Grandma Carter left us the house because she knew what you and Ryan would do with it. Flip it for quick cash like every other property you've ruined. She wanted it preserved, not destroyed." Color flooded Vanessa's cheeks. For a moment, I thought she might actually strike me. Instead, she gathered her folder with shaking hands. "This isn't over," she hissed, the exact words from the first note. After she stormed out, Mia grabbed my arm. "Okay, spill. What's really going on?" I pulled out both notes, watching my friend's eyes widen as she read them. "Have you told Ethan?" "He doesn't want to believe his brother could do this." I leaned against the shelves, suddenly exhausted. "And maybe he's right. Maybe I'm paranoid. Or maybe," Mia said slowly, "you need to stop playing nice and start playing smart." She was right. I'd been trying so hard to leave my past behind, to be the perfect partner and librarian, that I'd forgotten something crucial. Sometimes peace comes at a price. And I knew exactly how to make them pay it. After the confrontation at the library, I spent hours researching Ryan and Vanessa's failed property ventures. Public records told a story of mounting debt and desperate refinancing. But it was a social media notification that made my blood run cold. Someone had tagged Vanessa in photos from my old competition days. They knew. I stared at the images of my younger self on the martial arts circuit, trophies in hand, victory written across my face. The life I'd walked away from was now ammunition in their hands. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Nice roundhouse kick." Shame about that career-ending injury. Or was it? The walls of our cozy living room suddenly felt like they were closing in. I hadn't told Ethan everything about my past, about why I'd really left competitive fighting. Some secrets were better left buried. The front door opened and I quickly closed the browser. Ethan walked in, looking troubled. "Ryan called," he said, dropping his keys on the counter. "He wants to meet. Says he has information about the house that might interest us." "What kind of information?" "He wouldn't say. Just that it's important." Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. "Maybe we should hear him out." "Like we've heard him out about his last investment opportunity?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "The one that cost you $5,000? That was different." But his shoulders sagged. "He's still my brother, Lila." Before I could respond, another text came through. "Ask Ethan about the original will. The one from before you moved in." My heart stopped. "Ethan," I said carefully, "was there another will?" His silence was answer enough. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it doesn't matter." He finally looked at me. "Grandma changed it legally. She wanted you to have this place. But originally it was supposed to go to Ryan, wasn't it?" A knock at the door saved him from answering. Through the window, I saw a familiar face I hadn't seen in years. Jax Reynolds, my old training partner. "Expecting someone?" Ethan asked. I shook my head, moving to open the door. Jax stood there, looking more polished than I remembered in a business suit, but with the same calculating eyes. "Long time no see, champ," he said easily. "Mind if he come in?" Then tensed beside me. "Who's this?" "An old friend," I said, though friend wasn't exactly the right word. "What are you doing here, Jax?" He stepped inside, taking in our home with an appraising look. "Heard you might need some help. Ryan Carter's been asking questions about you around town." "Interesting questions." My stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that make me think he's digging for dirt." Jax's smile was sharp. "Good thing I know where all the bodies are buried, right?" Then moved closer to me. "Is that a threat?" "Actually," Jax pulled out his business card, Community Development Director. "It's an offer of help. Ryan's been trying to push through some questionable permits for his properties. It would be a shame if someone looked too closely at those applications." I studied my old teammate, trying to read his angle. "Why would you help me?" "Let's just say I owe you one." His eyes flickered to my left knee, the injury that ended everything. "And I don't like bullies." Another text buzzed in my pocket. "Time's running out. Meet tonight or the truth comes out." I looked between Ethan's worried face and Jax's knowing smirk. The past and present were colliding, and I had to choose, keep playing defense or finally strike back. "Tell me about those permits," I said to Jax. "Sometimes the best defense is a good offense." "An offense?" That was something I knew very well. "Lila," Ethan started, but I held up my hand. "No more secrets," I said firmly. "From any of us. It's time to end this." The weight of my past pressed against my chest, but for the first time since finding that first note, I felt steady. Ready. Let them come. I wasn't looking for a fight when I went for my evening run, but there was Ryan, leaning against my car in the library parking lot after closing. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty lot. Perfect timing for an ambush. "Thought you'd want these back," he said, holding up a stack of photographs. Even from several feet away, I recognized them, shots from my competition days, including one from my last match. The one that ended everything. "Where did you get those?" I kept my voice steady, though my heart raced. "Amazing what you can find online." He flipped through them casually. "You were quite the champion. Until that unfortunate accident." His smile turned cruel. Or should I say arrangement? My hands curled into fists. "What do you want, Ryan?" "Det truth." He pushed off my car, moving closer. "About how you manipulated my grandmother." About the real reason you quit fighting. About everything. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? He pulled out his phone. Because I have some interesting messages here from your old sponsor. He remembers that night very clearly. The memory flashed unbidden. The pressure to throw the fight, the threats, the choice I made that cost me everything. Everything except my integrity. Is that what this is about? I stepped forward. You're trying to blackmail me? I prefer to think of it as negotiation. Ryan's confidence wavered slightly as I moved closer. The house for your secrets. Simple trade. Nothing's ever simple with you. I was close enough now to see the sweat on his forehead. Does Ethan know you're here? Ethan needs to understand what kind of person you really are. That's when I saw Vanessa in her SUV, phone raised, recording everything. Of course, they wanted me to snap to prove I was still violent, still dangerous. But I wasn't that person anymore. Or at least I thought I wasn't. Last chance, Ryan said, dropping the photos at my feet. Sign over the house or everyone learns the truth. I looked at the scattered photos, at my younger self frozen in moments of victory. Then I looked at Ryan, really looked at him, the desperate gleam in his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. He was terrified. You want the truth? Kept my voice low, controlled. Here it is. I didn't manipulate your grandmother. She saw through you both long before I came along. She knew about the gambling debts, the failed schemes, the money you borrowed from her savings. Ryan's face paled. That's a lie. Is it? Should we ask Jax about those permit applications? The ones with forged signatures? He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You don't know anything. Years of training kicked in automatically. One fluid movement and Ryan was on the ground, my knee pressed firmly between his shoulder blades. I heard Vanessa scream, car doors slamming. I know everything, I said quietly, holding him down with minimal effort. Every debt, every scheme, every lie. Your grandmother knew too. That's why she changed her will. Let him go. Vanessa was running towards us, phone still recording. You're proving everything we said about you. I released Ryan and stepped back, keeping my stance ready. He scrambled up, face red with rage and humiliation. You're done, he spat. When Ethan sees this. When I see what? We all turned. Ethan stood at the edge of the lot, expression unreadable. Behind him was Jax, holding a thick folder. Perfect timing, Jax said, smiling. I was just coming to discuss those permit applications with Ryan. And look, we have witnesses. Color drained from Ryan's face. Vanessa's phone lowered slowly. Ethan, Ryan started, but his brother held up a hand. I saw everything, he said quietly. And I heard everything. He moved to stand beside me, his hand finding mine. It's over, Ryan. All of it. Choice I'd made years ago to walk away rather than compromise my principles had cost me a career. But standing there, feeling Ethan's support, seeing Ryan and Vanessa's schemes crumbling, I knew I'd make the same choice again. Sometimes the biggest victories come from knowing when not to fight. But sometimes you have to show them exactly what you're capable of. Carter family gathering felt more like a powder keg waiting to explode. I watched from our kitchen as relatives filled the backyard, their cheerful conversations masking the tension underneath. Ethan squeezed my hand, a silent reminder that we had a plan. But plans have a way of falling apart. Ready? He asked, checking his phone where Jax's message waited. Documents in hand. On my way. I nodded, though my stomach churned. After the parking lot incident, Ryan and Vanessa had gone suspiciously quiet. Too quiet. Well, isn't this cozy? Vanessa's voice cut through the crowd as she and Ryan approached. She carried a thick manila envelope that made my skin crawl. Family all together, just like old times. Ryan wouldn't meet our eyes, but something in his stance set off warning bells in my head. He looked satisfied, like someone who knew they'd already won. Before everyone sits down, Vanessa announced loudly, we have something to share. She pulled documents from her envelope. Some interesting information about dear Lila's past. The chatter died down. I felt dozens of eyes turn toward me. Vanessa, Ethan started, but she spoke over him. Did you know your sweet librarian was involved in illegal betting? That she took money to throw fights? She smiled coldly. We have proof. My chest tightened. That's not. And that's not all, Ryan finally spoke, his voice carrying across the yard. We found something else. About Grandma's last days. Ethan stiffened beside me. This wasn't part of the plan. Turns out, Ryan continued, there were some interesting withdrawals from her accounts. Large ones. Right around the time Lila moved in to help care for her. The accusations hung in the air like poison. I saw doubt creep into the relatives' faces, heard their whispers. Show them the rest, Vanessa urged her husband, pulling out more papers. About how she manipulated. Stop. Ethan's voice cut through the tension. Just stop. Why? Ryan challenged. Afraid of the truth? About how your girlfriend stole what should have been mine. I waited for Ethan to defend me, to reveal what we knew about Ryan's schemes. Instead, he hesitated just for a moment. But that moment was enough. Ethan, I whispered. He looked between me and his brother, torn. I need to see those documents. The ground seemed to shift under my feet. After everything, after the parking lot, after all our planning, he still doubted me? You don't need to see anything, I said quietly. You just need to trust me. But he was already reaching for the papers Vanessa held out triumphantly. The same papers we'd planned to expose as forgeries when Jax arrived. My phone buzzed. Accident on May. Delayed 20 minutes. Hold them off. Too late. Oh my, Vanessa gasped theatrically as she read over Ethan's shoulder. These bank records. Lila, how could you? The documents were lies. I knew they were lies. But watching Ethan's face change as he read them, seeing the doubt creep in despite everything we'd been through. I can explain, I started, but the words felt hollow. How do you explain away carefully crafted lies when the truth sounds just as unbelievable? Ryan moved closer, his voice low enough that only I could hear. You should have taken the deal. Now you lose everything. I looked around at the judging faces, at Ethan still reading those poison papers, at the home I'd fought so hard to protect. Everything I'd built, everything I'd changed about myself, crumbling because of carefully constructed lies. I trusted you, Ethan finally said, his voice breaking. After everything with Ryan, I chose you. You still can, I whispered. Just wait. For what? Ryan interrupted. More lies? More manipulation? Crowd had grown silent, watching the drama unfold. I saw phones recording, faces I'd grown to love now twisted with suspicion and judgment. In that moment, I realized something terrible. Sometimes the truth doesn't matter. Sometimes the story people want to believe is stronger than reality. I turned and walked away, leaving behind the whispers, the accusations, and the man I loved still holding papers that told lies about me. Sometimes walking away isn't surrender, it's survival. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because while they were all focused on destroying my reputation, they'd forgotten something crucial. I hadn't survived this long by playing nice. I was halfway to my car when Jax's voice cut through the murmur of the gathering. Those are interesting documents you've got there, Ryan. Mind if I take a look? Crowd parted as Jax strode through, briefcase in hand, looking more like a prosecutor than a community development director. I turned back, watching Ryan's confident smirk falter. This is a private family matter, Vanessa said quickly, trying to gather the papers. Oh, I think it's very public. Jax opened his briefcase. Especially considering these forged permit applications with Ryan's signature. And these bank records showing mysterious deposits right after Grandma Carter's jewelry went missing. The whispers shifted. I saw heads turning, expressions changing. That's ridiculous, Ryan sputtered. You can't prove. Actually, I can. Jax pulled out more documents. See, when you started digging into Lila's past, you caught the attention of some interesting people. People who remembered your gambling debts, Ryan. People who kept very detailed records. Finn stepped forward, the false documents forgotten in his hands. What gambling debts? Tell them, Ryan, I said quietly. Tell them about the real reason you need this house so badly. Ryan's face had gone pale. Vanessa grabbed his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. Don't say anything. They're bluffing. Am I? Jax turned to the crowd. Mrs. Peterson, remember when your wedding rings disappeared during that dinner party? The one where Ryan helped clean up. The elderly neighbor gasped, hands flying to her chest. That's enough. Ryan lunged forward, but I was ready. One swift movement and he was on his knees, arm locked behind him, not hurting, just contained. Years of training made it look effortless. The truth, Ryan, I said firmly. All of it. Now. You don't understand, he gasped. The debts. They were going to hurt Vanessa. I had to do something. So you stole from your own grandmother? Finn's voice cracked. From our neighbors? I was going to pay it back. Ryan struggled against my hold. Once we got the house, we could sell it, start fresh. But you, he glared at me, you ruined everything. No, Ryan. I released him carefully. You did that yourself. Vanessa suddenly laughed, a sharp, desperate sound. You want the truth? Fine. We're broke. Worse than broke. Every property we bought is worthless. Every investment failed. And there you were, living in our house, playing happy families. It was never your house, a new voice said. We all turned to see Mia holding up her phone. And I have Grandma Carter's last video message to prove it. The screen showed the elderly woman in her hospital bed, clear-eyed and determined. I'm leaving the house to Ethan and Lila because they love it like I do. They'll preserve it, not sell it for quick cash like Ryan wants. I know about the stealing, the gambling. I'm not angry, just disappointed. The house needs protectors, not profiteers. Silence fell over the gathering. Ryan slumped, defeated. Vanessa's perfect mask cracked, tears streaming down her face. I trusted you, Ethan said to his brother. Even when the evidence was right in front of me, I wanted to believe in you. I never meant. Ryan stopped, looking lost. I didn't know how to ask for help. You still could, I said softly. But it starts with the truth. All of it. Ryan looked at me, then at Jax's documents, then at his wife. Something shifted in his expression, resignation, maybe, or relief. Okay, he whispered. Okay. As Ryan began to speak, confessing everything, I felt Ethan's hand slip into mine. An apology, an acknowledgement, a promise. Sometimes victory isn't about winning the fight. Sometimes it's about giving your opponent the chance to surrender with dignity, to choose truth over pride. I'd learned that lesson the hard way years ago in the ring. Now, watching Ryan finally face his demons, I realized that maybe some fights are won not by striking, but by standing firm until the truth has nowhere else to hide. The house would stay ours, but more importantly, the truth would stay too, all of it, mine and Ryan's both. 'Cause sometimes the only way forward is to stop running from your past and learn to walk with it instead. 6 months after the confrontation, I found another note in our mailbox. My hands didn't shake this time as I opened it, though my heart skipped when I recognized Ryan's handwriting. We're in Seattle now, it read. Starting over. Really starting over. Thank you for not pressing charges. For giving us a chance to make things right. I sat on our porch swing, the same spot where this all began, and finished reading. Ryan had entered rehab for his gambling addiction. Vanessa was working at a real estate firm, legitimately this time. They were in therapy, both together and separately. Everything okay? Ethan appeared in the doorway, concern etched on his face. Old hobbits die hard. Your brother wrote. I handed him the letter. They're doing better. He read in silence, then settled beside me on the swing. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of Mrs. Peterson's roses. She'd finally forgiven us for all the drama after Ryan returned her wedding rings, along with a heartfelt apology. Do you ever regret it? Ethan asked quietly. Showing mercy instead of pressing charges? I thought about that moment after Ryan's confession when everyone expected me to demand justice, to make them pay for every threat, every lie. Instead, I'd offered a choice: face the consequences legally or take the chance to rebuild their lives somewhere else. No, I said finally. Some fights aren't worth winning if the victory costs too much. Ethan nodded, understanding what I meant. His relationship with Ryan was different now, cautious, fragile, but healing. Like a broken bone that needed time to mend properly. Jax called today, he mentioned, changing the subject. The community center wants you to teach self-defense classes. Said something about putting your skills to better use than throwing his brother-in-law around parking lots. I laughed, surprising myself. The sound echoed across our front yard, where neighborhood kids now played freely, no longer afraid of the scary librarian with the mysterious past. Maybe I will, I mused. It might be time to stop hiding who I am. You never had to hide, Ethan said softly. I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you did. Before I could respond, a car pulled into our driveway. Mia stepped out, carrying a folder of library event plans, while Jax followed with takeout bags. Family dinner? Mia called out, waving the folder. We can plan the summer reading program while we eat. Family. The words settled warmly in my chest. Not just Ethan now, but Mia and Jax too. Even Mrs. Peterson, who'd taken to leaving her famous apple pies on our porch every Sunday. As we moved inside, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. Not just the librarian, not just the fighter, but something in between. Something whole. The house creaked softly around us, familiar and welcoming. Grandma Carter would have loved this, I thought. Not just preserving the building, but filling it with new life, new memories. Later that night, after our friends had left, I found one last surprise in Ryan's letter, a small key taped to the bottom of the page. Found this in our things, his postscript read. It belongs to Grandma's old jewelry box. The real one, not the decoy she kept on her dresser. Maybe you'll have better luck finding it than we did. I showed Ethan, watching his eyes light up with recognition. The attic, he said. She always told us the house had secrets, but only for those patient enough to discover them properly. Tomorrow we'd climb into the attic and search for that hidden box. Tomorrow we'd add another chapter to this house's story. But for now, I was content to sit with Ethan, listening to our home's quiet breathing, feeling the perfect balance between my past and present. The last light of day filtered through our windows, casting long shadows that looked almost like they were dancing. Somewhere in Seattle, Ryan and Vanessa were building a new life. Here, in this house that had seen both battle and peace, we were building something too. Not just a home, but a testament to the fact that sometimes the strongest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from helping them find their way back to themselves.